body built for survival. Every part of its body was built for strength, from its powerful shoulders to its enormous curved claws. The giant sloth approaches a thick, low tree branch and uses its enormous claws to pull the branch downward. Even when the animal vanished, its enormous footprints continued to tell the story of where giants once walked. The giant sloth was only one part of a remarkable ecosystem filled with powerful and unusual animals. Size offered protection, but even the largest herbivores had to remain alert in a world full of predators. When climate conditions changed, finding enough food and water became a growing challenge for giant herbivores. Waterholes became vital meeting points where even the largest animals had to share limited resources. Eventually, the world that supported these giants began to change, and their long journey entered its final chapter. If giant Megatherium sloths still walked America today, the continent's wild landscapes would look completely different. Giant ground sloths explored more than forests, moving through the diverse landscapes of ancient North America. Even difficult terrain could not completely stop a giant built to travel across an enormous continent. Thick fur helped these giants endure the changing conditions of an unpredictable Ice Age world. Forests provided more than food. They also offered shelter from powerful weather and changing temperatures. By feeding and moving through vegetation, giant herbivores could influence the shape of the ecosystems around them.
The animal travels through a long corridor of vegetation, leaving a visible trail of bent plants and deep footprints.
When plants flourished, these enormous herbivores had access to the resources needed to support their extraordinary size. Survival sometimes meant simply enduring the harsh environmental forces of a changing continent. Wetlands offered another source of vegetation, adding variety to the giant herbivores' enormous diet. Every step carried the weight of an animal whose size left unmistakable evidence in the ground. Some Eremotherium giant sloths lived across regions where seasonal cold made survival even more demanding. Natural shelters could help these enormous animals conserve energy during difficult environmental conditions. Across ancient America, the giant sloth left behind more than bones. It left a story written across the landscape. Standing tall gave this giant access to vegetation hidden above the reach of smaller herbivores. Moving across a continent required strength not only for feeding, but also for crossing difficult terrain. In a world without roads or cities, natural forces controlled every journey across the landscape.
Even powerful storms became part of the daily challenges faced by ancient wildlife.
Even a massive body needed to conserve energy during the hottest hours of the day. For countless generations, giant sloths were part of the living history of America, until that ancient world began to disappear. As the climate changed, the landscapes that supported giant sloths slowly began to transform.
Forests did not vanish overnight, but their gradual retreat changed the world these giants depended on.
Water remained essential, but even ancient lakes and wetlands could change with the climate. Survival depended on finding food whenever changing conditions made it available. The disappearance of giant sloths was likely connected to a complex combination of environmental and ecological changes. Eventually, the living giants disappeared, but their tracks and remains continued to survive beneath the earth. The giant ground sloth is gone, replaced by a new ecosystem. The land continued changing. Long after the animal disappeared, its fossilized remains offered the first clues to its extraordinary existence. From fossil fragments, an entire lost world can return to life through evidence, science, and imagination. Now imagine the giant sloth had survived and still walked through North America today. Rivers would remain essential, connecting feeding grounds and providing water across its enormous range. Few living land animals could match the sheer physical presence of this ancient herbivore. The giant sloth spends its day much like its modern relatives, slowly grazing on the abundant. With its thick coat and powerful body, the Megatherium giant sloth might have endured harsh seasonal conditions. When warmer seasons returned, abundant vegetation could once again support the needs of a giant herbivore. Seeing a giant sloth alive today would completely change how we imagine the ancient history of America. Today, fossils are the only evidence of these giants, but science allows their story to be understood. Once, animals like this helped define the scale and character of America's ancient wilderness. When the giant disappeared, the wilderness lost more than one species. It lost an entire ecological presence. Though the real giant is gone, its story allows us to imagine a world where ancient giants still walked beside us. The giant sloth vanished long ago, but if it returned today, would America still have room for a true prehistoric giant?